The Valhallan Ice Warriors comprise the famous Militarum Regimentum of the Astra Militarum, which hails from the frozen, desolate ice world of Valhalla, located in the Segmentum Ultima. The Valhallan Ice Warriors have a long and glorious history of victories against the Orcs and other enemies of the Imperium. Famed as some of the toughest regiments ever deployed by the Imperial Guard, these grim and tenacious troops never retreat and refuse to surrender. They are particularly successful at cold weather combat and are often used by the Imperium when a campaign of attrition must be fought on an ice world that is similar to the climate of their frigid homeworld, or when an operation involved combat against the Orcs. The regiments of Valhalla have a reputation for stoicism and dedication to the Emperor. When attacking, they are renowned for combining massed artillery barrages with infantry assault waves. When defending, they show dogged determination even in the face of defeat. The Valhallans are stubborn and stern people who refuse to acknowledge their own hardships, and are rarely deterred by the horrors of the battlefield. They are all but impervious to the harsh conditions and have a casual disregard for human life, leading to a superstition amongst militarum regimentos that ice runs through their veins just as it covers their home world. The desolate ice world of Valhalla is the birthplace of the famously valiant Astra Militarum regiments known as the Valhallan Ice Warriors. Located in the Segmentum Ultima, Valhalla was once a verdant paradise world of temperate forests and broad, fertile plains. However, the planet's destiny was a harsh one. Not long before the end of the Age of Strife, over 10,000 standard years ago, a rogue comet entered into collision course with Valhalla's surface. The planet's defense lasers fired at the comet, but only succeeded in breaking it up. Later, it was found that the comet was made of almost pure iron, explaining why the powerful defense lasers had proved so ineffective. The comet impacted Valhalla's vast planetary ocean, but a mile-wide fragment impacted the northern continent, creating vast plumes of dust, which proceeded to cover the planet in a blanket of dirt. To make matters worse, the planet's orbit was also altered by the ferocity of the impact, moving it in on a course that forced it into a new orbit farther from its sun. This change in the amount of incoming warmth and light altered Valhalla's ecosystem permanently, reshaping the planet into an icy wasteland. The Valhallan people struggled to survive in this new environment, fearing famine due to the lack of viable farmland, until they carved out a new home for themselves in massive subterranean caverns deep beneath the ice, where there was still some modicum of geothermal warmth. Valhalla is now nothing more than an inhospitable orb, its landscape perpetually frozen wasteland. Though the planet no longer affluent, the Astra Militarum regiments raised there are famous throughout the Imperium. Unfortunately, this was not the end of Valhalla's troubles. The comet strike had been a catastrophe, but it was not to be the end of the people's suffering. Not long after the comet strike, a damaged Orc war fleet descended on the planet and proceeded to fight the Valhallans for every gram of precious food they had stored. The Valhallans held out bravely for a long time in their vast hive cities beneath the ice, but were ultimately pushed right back to the food vats. Eventually, they destroyed the Orcs by using ice-boring machines to strategically strike at the heart of the mob, burning and melting most of the Orcs and scattering the rest. Even this greenskin invasion proved unable to blunt the Valhallans' indomitable spirit. Their grim refusal to surrender, despite overwhelming opposition, had won them a historic, if bloody, victory. After destroying the Orc invaders on their home world, Valhallan Planetary Defense Force regiments, in an act of vengeance, joined with other Astra Militarum armies to cleanse their sector of the hated greenskin menace. The Guard proved so impressed with the combat ability of the Valhallans that the Departamento Munitorum soon turned to Valhalla as its prime source of new Imperial Guard regiments. After being raised as Imperial Guardsmen themselves, Valhallans continued to display the same stoic determination they had shown in defence of the ice cities of their own home world. Always the Valhallans fought with the same austere determination that was displayed by every man, woman and child in the defence of their ice cities of their homeworld. To this day, the courage and tenacity of the Valhallans in battle continue to earn them respect and admiration of other regiments all over the galaxy. A stubborn and stern people, Valhallans refuse to acknowledge their hardships, but their homeworld is not a forgiving one. In the wake of the comet strike and subsequent orc invasion, life on the planet of Valhalla has only flourished underground. The population of Valhalla exists entirely in vast subterranean caverns carved out from the rock and ice beneath the planet's surface, warmed by the planetary core. These underground inhabitants are woefully overcrowded, packed with citizens so thickly that human life on Valhalla is considered inconsequential and cheap. To alleviate the people's hunger, nutrient slime is cultivated on the cavern walls by generations of ceaseless toil and sacrifice. Due to the overcrowded conditions within the subterranean inhabitants of Valhalla, life is considered cheap. Even the most petty crime carries with it the harshest of sentences: death. Only those citizens who volunteer for Imperial Guard escape such existence. But such a service is considered an honour. The Valhallans have a long and proud history as a prime source of providing regiments for the Departamento Munitorum, and many regiments of Valhallan ice warriors have earned a considerable renown for their heroism and steadfast refusal to given when lesser soldiers would surrender and lesser regiments would collapse beneath the weight of their impending doom. Over the millennia, the guardsmen of Valhalla have fought for the Emperor across thousands of worlds. Their steadfast valour and casual disregard for their own lives has built a legend that inspires countless citizens across the Imperium. Stern and uncompromising, the Valhallan ice warriors are valued and admired by many Imperial Guard officers in need of reliable troops. Often, the Valhallan ice warriors are deployed in war zones infested with orcs in order to take advantage of their regiment's intimate knowledge of orc tactics and to channel the troops' undying hatred for the Greenskins who invaded their homeworld so long ago. Similarly, Valhallans are commonly positioned where their dogged resolve can bolster surrounding allies and hold the line where other armies might fall back when faced with certain death. Due to the overcrowded conditions within the subterranean habitats on Valhalla, life is considered cheap. Even the most petty crime carries with it the harshest of sentences: execution. Those that do not serve in the Valhallan armoured artillery or famed ice warriors, infantry regiments must toil in the dark caverns that comprise the icy world's hive cities. Cultivating the nutrient slimes that sustain the populace, Valhallan soldiers are expected to carry each and every item they will need to survive. Without their thermally insulated greatcoats and helmets, a Valhallan guardsman's blood would freeze within seconds on the Arctic surface of Valhalla. The armoured battle tanks and artillery units of Valhalla are uniformly camouflaged in a manner suited to the frozen tundra of their world. Each vehicle proudly displays the name and homeworld on its hull. Valhallan regiments on the Spinwood front of the Calixus periphery subsector are commonly placed into war zones where their experienced fighting orcs can be best employed. Additionally, Lord Marshal Ganzoric seems to favour the Valhallans' fighting style, and the Ice Warriors have often been deployed into battlefields with the harshest environmental conditions. Ice Warriors have made planet strikes on Mesa and suppressed a mutant uprising on Sisk. But many of the Valhallan senior officers believe Gensoric's future plans for the regiment involve a direct strike at Arvitol, the homeworld of the Orc menace now ravaging the subsector. Given the failure of the last Imperial assaults on that world, it is likely the Valhallans will simply be one part of a much larger attack force. But there is a sense of quiet pride amongst the Valhallan Ice Warriors that they would be considered for the honour of taking the fight to the Orc warlord Grimtooth himself. The formations are generally concentrated into large batteries of heavily artillery, usually basilisks and manticores, supported and defended by the robust infantry forces. The indomitable grit of the Valhallans allowed them to weather the horrors of the Nocturnus Aeterna, a period when the Astronomicon was lost within the roiling warp storms after the birth of the Great Rift in the N999.M41. Without it, supply fleets were flung far off course or lost to the warp entirely, and many worlds fell to famine and despair. This created the ideal conditions for the minions of the Dark Gods, and chaos cults arose amongst crowded and terrified populations across the sector. Not so on Valhalla. The planet had survived calamity before, and it would do so again. The Valhallans kept their vigil, and despite stringent food and heat rations, continued to recruit and train as they had always done. Valhallans deployed through the Imperium Nihilus have also fared better than many other Imperial forces. With long-range communications silenced, the lumbering military machine of the Ashta Militarum ground to a shuddering halt. Infantry platoons marched hopelessly into war zones without armoured support, and companies scouring planets of Xenos were obliterated by the orbital bombardments of Allied fleets, who were unaware of the ground presence. The Valhallans hunkered down wherever they were stationed, and followed the last orders that come crackling over the comlinks before all had fallen quiet. Their glacial advances continued. Driven on in the absence of central command by the inexorable obstinacy